welcome to the Crimson Stitchery, a video channel about making all things beautiful and useful. My name is Anushka and you can find me elsewhere online as a Sourtelling, that's a Sourtelling, and that is my username on Instagram and Ravelry, where we also have a Ravelry group for lots of general chatter, participation in knit-alongs and lots of lovely people. I'm again going to start this fortnight's episode with the elephant in the room, which is that I am dressed like a drag queen slash poor woman's version of a Vegas showgirl for this episode, because why not? I was brushing my hair and then I popped it over my head and I thought it looks like a beehive slash victory roll, and then I just kind of ran with it. Also, I'm releasing this video a little bit later in the week, but it is the 31st of May that I'm recording this video on, which is the last day of Me Made May, which I had been participating in on my Instagram stories, but totally gave up about 2 weeks ago, about halfway through. I just kind of got bored of it, to be honest with you. But I thought, do you know what, it's the last day of May, so I'm going to wear my most camp and sparkly self-made items and record my podcast, because I've got a little bit of time before I have to go off and do other things, basically. So here we are. So I will open this episode by talking about what I'm wearing, which is some things that you've seen before, because I've shown you this sparkly blue skirt a couple of weeks ago. So that is a self-made, self-drafted pencil skirt using leftover sequin fabric, and then the lining is like very, very old. If I get a little bit closer, I'm sort of doing like a Gilda thing. Give me a shout out in the comments if you know what I mean by Gilda. Yes, lovely Chinese style satin woven brocade lining, which has got chrysanthemums on it, which definitely wasn't intended to be lining fabric, and I used it as such, somewhat mistakenly. And then the bra that I am wearing is a again, this is getting very, very camp, is the Watson bra that I've done with a sequin lurex threaded like jersey fabric with like a purple overcast. Hopefully that's coming across. And yeah, it is a bra. It's got a pretty low back, and I made this bra. This wasn't made from leftovers. The bra was made as part of a two-piece set for a Halloween costume a couple of years ago. I went as an acrobat, because I'm definitely not flexible enough to be an acrobat, and I think that was sort of the horror. The horror was the idea of what my body looks like in dance. So I was like an acrobat slash Pierrot clown parody in gold metallic foil jersey. So yes, that's what I am wearing. And just having a little giggle. Is anyone else out there taking the opportunity to pull out your most glamorous togs, your threads from the back of your wardrobe to dress up in during lockdown, confinement, pandemic, whatever you want to call it? Let me know in the comments if any of you have been indulging in camp alter egos or not. Just having a little laugh. My partner was like, you look crazy. But with a smile on his face, you know, happily, you look crazy. So that's that. Let's get straight to the show. I'm going to be chatting about what I've been knitting on, what I've been mending and sewing, and what I've been making in general. So firstly, what's in my knitting basket? And you'll notice, regular viewers will notice, a little pair of violet socks springing off the side of the knitting basket here. And that is because the second sock pattern in my warm weather socks collection for the 6-month-long Crimson Sock-along is now ready. Hooray! So I'll just close up to the camera a little bit here whilst trying not to give you too much of a view. What they are is another pair of slightly ribbed lace socks. And I will, I'll pop in the photos from our photo shoot here now. So this is the second warm weather sock collection pattern that I have designed and released. At the end of the day, you know, firstly, we're in the start of summer in the Northern Hemisphere, but also we are also facing the real ramifications of climate change overall. And I feel like as knitters, you know, we love to knit socks, and knitting socks out of wool and wool blends is the most enjoyable and suitable material to use. So I wanted to think of ways to make good socks for warmer weather and warming, you know, the warming climate in general, that knitters could continue to enjoy to make and enjoy to wear, and most importantly through summer. So I had already made a bunch of lace socks over the years, and I basically sort of built on all of the things that I thought, you know, worked, and the things that I thought could be improved, and I'm factoring all of that into my designing and pattern writing for this collection that I am doing and releasing, kind of pushing myself to do at some point at the beginning of the month. So this sock pattern is called Wafer Crunch, and the first one that was released a couple of weeks ago was Twister Lolly, that was named after an ice cream, and the theme of this pattern is sort of 1990s bright colours and confectionery in general. So if you compare it to Twister Lolly, if I hold them up again, it's a little bit fancier. It's got this lovely twisted eyelet rib that is a really big feature, and there's a tiny bit more thinking to go on with the pattern compared to the Twister Lolly. You know, it's like the fancier cousin to Twister Lolly. Twister Lolly's like the wild child that runs around screaming with a paddling pool, and the purple ones, Wafer Crunch, are like her cousin that arrived in a pretty party dress that didn't want to get it dirty. So yeah, it's a little bit fancier, playing around with twisted patterns. Some simplicity compared to the Twister Lolly, because the Twister Lolly had this fabulous ribbed toe, and the Wafer Crunch doesn't. It just has a plain toe so that you can relax by the time that you get to the toe. So just a little bit of comparison there. And then Wafer Crunch. So I've got this V-shaped pattern that reminded me of wafer cone ice creams. And also I liked the sort of bas relief effect. Bas relief, for those who don't know, basically refers to kind of plaster sculptures. If you imagine on the wall of like a Baroque Italian cathedral or church, that kind of idea, where there are sort of carvings where they just come out slightly away from the wall, as opposed to like a full figure coming off the wall, like a full 3D sculpture. Bas relief is just slightly coming away. Because bar means low. So yeah, this sort of bar, kind of cheap, again, poor woman's bas relief on a wafer cone, and the way that the texture just comes away very, very slightly. And I wanted to kind of play with that idea, and just thinking about where texture and pattern is found in everyday life and in very commonplace food products, as it were, just very mundane everyday things, which is a lot, you know, I build on those themes quite a lot in the Crimson Stitchery, although sometimes your everyday life involves, you know, sequins. Definitely my personal everyday life involved sequins for a number of years when I was working as a costumier, all-round costume person a few years ago. Not anymore. Now my life involves dry academic books as a PhD student. But anyway, I digress. Yeah, and I guess also sort of thinking about what's considered humble and what's considered extravagant. You know, I would say that for many people, hand knitting your own socks is considered extravagant, just in general. I think sometimes us knitters have the, and just people that make their own clothes, sort of have the sense a little bit that we're living in a bubble, because everyone you know, our friends and people we speak to and so on, it's just normal, isn't it, just to be knitting socks all the time. But actually, if you take a step back, it is actually quite an unusual hobby. So yeah, a little bit of extravagance, a little bit of the mundane, a little bit of the everyday, and playing around with colour and texture, things that I want to fit well, things I want to work, and also, you know, pushing myself in pattern writing too. These patterns are multi-sized for 4 sizes, and that's been quite challenging, sort of trying to write with brevity but elegance. I don't like it when knitting patterns are too wordy. I feel like a lot of the time there's just sort of, you know, excess fat that could be skimmed, and I think it's good when things are written with clarity. I will say that I learnt to knit from like Rowan style knitting patterns, vintage knitting patterns, either ones that had been reproduced and rewritten by the likes of Susan Crawford, or just the genuine article old patterns that I'd find in charity shops and so on. And I'm very used to brevity, so I think that was really good because it pushes the maker to engage with the task at hand, and also, you know, really think about the techniques, learn to read your knitting, learn to research and find other resources, whereas the contemporary way of pattern writing has sort of gone to the other extreme, I think, with some pattern writers and companies, where there's like so much information, the documents are huge. I remember I bought a heel knitting pattern, and it was something like 20 pages of PDF long, and it really could have been half a page in my opinion. It's just unnecessary and off-putting. So kind of trying to tread that delicate balance between giving you the information you need in a clear way and not being too rambly and not being too Spartan, if you like, with the descriptions and so on. So anyway, wafer crunch. Let me know if you cast one on. Oh, and before I forget, there is a 20% discount code for the first week of the pattern. So do click into the down bar here below on YouTube, where there'll be information about the discount code, which is Flaming June. So use the discount code for Flaming June for 20% off at Ravelry checkout. And yes, click into the down bar here below on YouTube to find links and so on and so forth. I'm sure that my regular viewers are quite aware of that, but hello to anyone who has recently subscribed. There have been a few new subscriptions lately, and I was so excited to see that we finally reached the milestone of 4,000 subscribers, which is a really big deal for me. So thank you so much to everybody who has taken the time to comment, to watch, to hit the like button and to hit the subscribe button, because doing all of those things, it helps the video to get out there into the YouTube algorithms. It helps bring people, you know, to learn about what I've been making and hear my messages and see all of this eccentricity in general. And obviously slowly but steadily growing my design work in tandem as well it's really meaningful to me, and it's a way of just sustaining it, you know, sustaining doing the Crimson Stitchery and continuing to make this an output of mine. So yes, so thank you very much to people. I've got to say that when I first started, you know, watching knitting podcasts and just engaging with stuff on YouTube in general, I didn't realise how important that interaction actually is. And I was like, oh, I only clicked the thumbs up button if I wanted to save the video. But you know, you can save videos to specific playlists that you want to watch, and then you can just click the thumbs up button anyway and just show support and engagement to the content creators. So that's something that I myself have started to do a lot more, and thank you to everybody else who are much better at engaging with online communities than I am. You know, I'm learning, I'm very new to this myself. So just a big thank you. Let me know if you cast on the Wafer Crunch socks or if you've already cast on the Twister Lolly. And also, yeah, just to reiterate, the Crimson Sock Along is a 6-month-long sock knit along happening on Instagram and Ravelry with the hashtag Crimson Sock Along to knit any of my sock patterns. And there are going to be prizes, but I'm going to be making them, so I haven't, not quite ready to talk about that yet, but there are going to be prizes on 3 levels. So a prize for anyone that just participates in general, a prize for people's finished objects, and also there'll be a 3rd category of prize for someone that knits 6 different patterns. So I was going to say all of the patterns in the Crimson Stitchery knitting catalogue, all of the sock patterns, but I think I'm going to say 6 different patterns because it sort of makes a bit more sense. So they could be 6 ones, the 6 patterns that are coming out that I'm releasing, or they could include my last year's sock designs as well. So that's these. And oh yeah, so while we're staying on the topic of socks, I have started to see people's whips, works in progress and finished objects of the Twister Lolly socks, and I was really delighted to see that quite a lot of people were knitting these shorter trainer socks as well, which I've done in this fluorescent yellow colour. And I wanted to ask you guys about that because obviously for the Twister Lolly socks I knit 2 samples. So I started off with the trainer socks, and then I thought, well, they just don't photograph as nicely as ankle socks do. So I knit the 2nd sample. And then when it comes to these ones, I only did the ankle sock. So my question is, what is your feeling about kind of seeing trainer socks in sock patterns? I'd love to get some feedback on that, and if you think it would be helpful for me to knit samples of trainer socks in future patterns, or what, you know, is it considered quite self-evident that you can just create a trainer sock just by doing a tiny little cuff? Yeah, so if you have any thoughts or opinions on that, I'd be very interested to hear them and to have that feedback, you know, either here or on Ravelry or Instagram or wherever you want to get in touch with me and talk about it. So yes, I'm gonna put these down, and then the next thing I've been working on quite slowly is my vintage cabled cardigan that I've now worked up quite far onto the back of. Just doing a couple of rows a night really, and yeah, so that is that there. And I think it's going to work. I was quite worried at first that it wouldn't look good with my skin tone, but I think it's coming out quite nicely. And yeah, so I've nearly finished up the back, and just bring it a bit closer for the text. But yeah, that's coming out really nicely. Not much more to say about that. It's my very slow project. So I'll just put that away now. And then the other project I've been working on, I've got a really big and ugly pile here. Where's it gone? Oh yeah. It's something that I started very randomly. I was procrastinating and I just wanted to do something different, which is fair enough. And this is a stashless project. Oh, so is the yellow. So if you're new to the channel, I've been running the initiative Stashless 2020 since January, where I aim to go stashless ish, or at least put a massive dent in my stash and stop buying so much yarn. So that's working quite well, because I've bought yarn for, you know, specific things to make a gift, and also I've bought yarn to make my sock samples, which was necessary, and I'm cracking on with those, but just stop buying yarn in other ways, and use a lot more of what I have. So this is it so far. It's still not finished, and the thing is, I really enjoyed making this in a weird way. Oh, I should say what it is. It's one of those French market bags. I don't know. Est-ce que vous êtes français? Et est-ce que vous direz c'est un sac du marché français? Like, would French people call this a French market bag? This is how they're sold in the UK, and I've never even liked them before, because what they are is they're a bag that is a net, basically, and it's actually much simpler than I thought. It's just done literally with chaining, so it's not even done with much actual crochet stitches. It's just done with a basic chain action, and then every now and then you catch it onto the previous chain, and then that makes a net. And it also looks like a Elizabethan snood or Tudor snood, if there was like little diamond jewels on it. I'm getting excited now. I'm getting excited. Yeah, like you could pop all of your hair. Oh, and the necklace is going in there as well, right? That could be like a little 1940s snood as well, especially with a victory roll, one random victory roll piled on top of my head. This is a very random episode because I don't have very much time, and I'm just trying to push it out. Push it out! Anyway, here we are. And it's come out smaller than I liked, and it's a stashless project because it's made using a ball of crochet thread that was my mum's, that in the 70s when she was a child she used to make doilies. She herself also doesn't know why she used to make doilies. She was like, why did I like doing them so much? I don't know. She didn't even like, no one even liked using doilies, not even in the 70s in our family. Anyway, that's been left over, and the hook's also hers. It's a 2mm hook. So yeah, I had this ball of crochet cotton kicking around just from the past, and I thought I'd make it up into this bag that I just got it into my head to make all of a sudden. So it's looking a little bit small. I think it's come out a little bit small, but I guess it will just open up and expand when I put stuff in it, and the idea is to use it for picnics specifically. And what else to say really, it looks kind of done, but I need to finish the handles and they're going to take ages because there's so many stitches. But I used a free pattern and I'll pop a link to my Ravelry project page so you can check it out there. And the pattern instructions were very confusing. I looked at the English instructions, not the French ones, and I wonder if the French ones might have a bit more clarity, but the English ones are a bit all over the place. But you know, thank you to the designer for providing a free pattern, but it wasn't very clear in many ways. And yeah, just cracking on with that. But I've had to take quite a few breaks from this pattern because the crochet has been making my hand hurt quite a lot, especially into my wrists, because of all of the twisting actions that you're doing. Especially using such a small hook and doing so many stitches. So yeah, that would have probably been finished otherwise, but hey ho, yeah, I am quite enjoying it, but I don't see any more of these in my future for the time being. Although now I've decided that I want to do a diamante studded Elizabethan snood, but we'll see about that. Okay, so that is all of the knitting and crochet that I'm surrounded with. So the next thing I'm going to do is mending stories. So we haven't had mending stories for a couple of weeks, but that is normally a pretty regular section of my podcast, my craft vlog, whatever you want to call this. And you've seen these shorts before because I sewed these up last summer out of some quilting cotton, all using scraps. So it was a Stashless project before Stashless 2020, including scraps of bias binding because on the back there's grey and when I ran out of green. And it's very, very sweet. And I had an accident with these because the elastic snapped very quickly, very early on. It was an old piece of elastic from my stash and I guess it was at the end of its life. It just popped open, so I had to unpick the channel and reinsert with also elastic that I had in my stash, but wider one this time, because the old elastic was 1/2 inch, this one was 1 inch, and re-sew the channel. And I really like these little shorts. This is a third pair that I've made, altered with sort of a weird mash-up between a pair of shorts that I drafted for myself, or trousers I drafted for myself, and a boxer shorts pattern that I copied off my partner and then made that into shorts for him. So a big mash-up of various different self-made patterns, and they're just so light and breezy. It's made from cotton lawn and I love wearing it either on its own. They're pretty skimpy, they don't leave very much to the imagination, but I'm pretty comfortable in my own skin, as you can surmise. So yeah, definitely for wearing around the house, and also just like wearing underneath full skirted dresses is pretty nice because yeah, they're sort of nice and breezy and that kind of goes with a big skirt and so on. So I finished my mend of my boxer shorts, lady boxers, and then this is a 19th century shirt that I sewed as a sample when I was doing my bachelor's degree in my second year. So that would have been in 2011, spring 2011. I was just thinking, was it 2010? But it would have been the spring because it was the second term. And yeah, so this was a sample 19th century shirt. So basically it's made out of muslin, very cheap muslin, very see-through, because it was only intended for a sample, you know, for a course as part of my degree. And I got it out, I found it when I was going through some old boxes of fabric. When I finished my costume degree, I had so much fabric that I just ended up throwing away, I think, because it was too much. I had so much, and then just every couple of years or so I have to do a cull where I just have to say no, because I always think that I'm going to do all these scrap projects and quilting projects and rag rugs and all of this kind of stuff, and it gets so overwhelming. Obviously it's been less now because I'm no longer working as a professional costumier, but I did do that for quite a number of years, just under 10 years in total. So it gets really suffocating, just leftovers from jobs. And this sequin skirt was a leftover from the last professional costume design job that I did before I think I was in the middle of my master's degree, but it was sort of like a swan song. It was like a goodbye job, and it was really lovely. It was a circus, aerial circus for disabled performers, run by an absolutely amazing performer and multi-instrumentalist. So yeah, it was just amazing work that they were doing. And it was a part of it was like a disability arts and performance festival. So it was a really fun job, and I costumed everybody like they were glamorous 1940s Hollywood studio star, which was really great fun. And also a really interesting experience working with performers who had different types of disabilities and different ways of moving in their body and bodily requirements, despite the fact that they were doing all of this amazing physical performance that was like well out of the remit of people that are not disabled, you know. So quite incredible work, and very talented people, and just an interesting project all round, and a lovely last thing to do before my career change into more academic stuff. So anyway, that was a bit of a tangent. So 19th century shirt, and because it was a sample, I didn't have any buttons and buttonholes because we were being marked on like the pattern cutting and the sewing, I think, not on the kind of specific. I think it was all about the pattern cutting actually. So I cracked out my buttonhole function on my sewing machine that I talked about last time, and I did buttonholes down the front and buttonholes on the cuff, because I discovered I didn't think that it would fit my partner, but actually it did end up, it looked pretty good on him, and it looks pretty lovely because it's so you can see it's quite see-through. You can see my arm, and also my partner is black, so you can see his body much more clearly through the shirt, but like in a really lovely way. I thought it might be a bit cliche and a bit, you know, like Liberace / someone called Sergio. I'm having like, you know, kind of weird associations of men in see-through shirts, but it didn't look as camp as I do now. It actually just looked really nice, and it looked really good, and it kind of hung on his body really nicely. You know, it was flattering. It wasn't a guy in a see-through shirt, put it that way. So he looked really good, and but it was quite funny because yeah, this is a 19th century shirt, and he had it on one evening, and he had it all buttoned up to the top because I think it got a bit chilly, so it was like, you know, up to here on him. And then he was wearing a do-rag, and I looked at him, and it was a black do-rag, and he had this shirt on. It was all done up, and the cuffs were all done up. He was very prim and proper with do-rag, and I was like, you look like a pirate. So that's all been very entertaining for me, and also just really glad to have something out of storage and actually into rotation, and regular rotation at that, because it's lovely to wear in this really warm, balmy, yet windy, summery weather that we've been having in May. So that was that one, and then the next mend to show you is another shirt that has been in the mending pile for a really long time, because I mean, we're literally talking like 3 years or something like that, maybe even 4, because I wasn't sure how to approach the mend, and I didn't have confidence to do it at all. And that's really something that I want to raise, because I think that, you know, you learn how to knit and how to sew, but actually learning about mending and repair really is a separate skill set. It's related and it borrows a lot of, you know, similar techniques, but it really is another craft in its own right, and often more challenging and more difficult than just starting something for new, which is definitely something that has been echoed by like the work people when I had my kitchen and bathroom redone. Yeah, and it's something that I think it's worth taking your time with, you know, appreciating that it takes a while to learn, that you're going to get it wrong. Anyway, yeah, so just moving on from that. So this is a shirt that was actually made by Toast, which is a sort of upmarket ready-to-wear brand, and they used to do menswear. They haven't done for a while, but this is a Toast men's shirt, and when I first saw this shirt of my partner's, I was really excited because it's cut like a 19th century shirt, but it probably is from 2008 at a complete guess. It's probably from around then or something like that, because he'd already had it for a few years when we got together, if you see what I mean. So I'm sort of tracing back through time, so that's a complete guess as to how old it is. But yes, it's cut like a 19th century shirt, which was so exciting to me as a costume person and fashion history person. And what was wrong with it? Well, there are a few things that were wrong. So one of the buttons, and it's got the most gorgeous mother of pearl shell buttons. You can see them reflecting the light. One of them had come off, but in a really dramatic way, in which the thread also tore off the fabric. So I used a piece of bias binding, and I did a little patch, and I just did it all by hand and stitched down and around the holes to reinforce it through a couple of layers. Obviously this not been constructed as a 19th century shirt would have done, although it does have the cut of a 19th century shirt, because you can spy a little bit of overlocking in here. Quite a bit of overlocking actually. Tut tut, I don't do overlocking on shirts, I do French seams. So that was that mend, and then the other places was that it had worn away. There was just a hole in the back where the fabric had worn away. Can you see that? It's come off straight off the laundry pile, so it hasn't been ironed. But can you see I've just done a stitch round, and it looks like a lovely barnacle or a limpet. And so I had patched that on the inside with just a piece of cotton lawn. You can see that in the light. And then the reason that I was struggling to mend it was because at the side vents of the shirt, you can see that there's a big patch, but basically it had torn up and across and up, so it had torn in multiple directions, probably got caught in a door handle, that kind of thing, and the fabric had pulled, and I really didn't know how to approach that for the longest time. And then finally I did a similar mend on a pair of his trousers a while ago, so it's really like a plaster. I had to sort of iron all of the fabric back together and then put a big patch sewed all the way around it, and then I patched it on the wrong side as well so that no raw material was showing. So that's got like a big patch there, and I think it's lovely. I think it's really lovely. It's like it's been bandaged back together, and you know, you'll notice that, but it really adds something to it, really adds texture, it adds character, and it's authentic for his role play / non-real life, non-role play as pirate. Yeah, so that's 2 shirts mended and my boxer shorts, and then there's one more mend that I just started yesterday, which is a vintage hat, and I'm not sure when this dates from. It could very well be 80s. It's a straw hat that's been machine sewn together, and I got it when an old lady died on my street, and her relatives sold her house and cleared it out, and there was just a box of hats. There was just a box of hats, and they, you know, her relatives asked, she lived only a few doors down, so when they were telling the community, you know, they said if anyone wants anything, this is stuff that we haven't managed to sell, if anyone wants to take it. So I got a desk, actually, I got a table, very worn but very lovely in its own way, and a bunch of hats. Yeah, and some tailor's chalk. It was like really random what was still in her house, really random. It didn't have any rhyme or reason. And this hat, I'll put some pictures in now, this hat had a horrible spray of old flowers and a very random piece of navy net that was stitched in on top of the brim, not underneath, so that when you were wearing it, there was just no veiled effect at all, and it was completely pointless because the veiling was up here. So when it's on your head, you couldn't see the veiling at all. It's not like it hung below the face in any way. Yeah, so that is that. And then, so I took all of that off, and then it also had a crack in the straw. So what I did was I took a piece of bias binding and contact adhesive glue, the solvent-based stuff, not the water-based stuff. It's got to feel like you're poisoning yourself or getting high for the glue to work for millinery, because it needs to be very strong yet flexible. And I did like a little plaster again with a piece of bias binding. And if you're ever doing anything with millinery and headwear, you must always use materials that have an element of stretch to them. So cut things on the bias, or petersham or grogram, but generally petersham is the material of choice used for hat bands because it has stretch to it. It expands with heat, so it will not feel like a horrible vice digging into your head. It will be a bit flexible. So I just did that little patch in there, and then this is it's not got a proper petersham hat band, but I'm just going to leave that there. And then it needs a piece of elastic because the crown is very, very shallow and it just sits on the back of the head. And it's just going to be a lovely little thing to wear, very sweet. So that's gone from being quite hideous to imminently wearable once I put the elastic in. So maybe next fortnight's episode will be a dress up episode too, but with quite a different feel, not with this like trashy 1980s, trashy 1960s go-go girl vibe that I've currently got going on right now, with this bizarre like grown out undercut that I've just completely given up on. I've given up on hair. I've given myself quite a few haircuts over the last couple of months in lockdown, and I've just given up at this point. I've just given up. So that is mending. And then sewing, I've made quite a lot more progress on the jacket that I've been making to match a pair of trousers that I showed last episode. And yes, these are the sleeves, they need to go in. And I'm not going to show you too much because I'll talk about it more when it's finished, but I've basically got a pair of jetted tailored pockets in there, which took a good session, and I absolutely loved making those. I enjoyed it so much. And then on the inside, I've got a very random piece of old kimono, vintage kimono that I was given from like someone's travel souvenirs. They thought of me when they saw a pile of bits of old kimono. It's not even like a full pair of sleeves, it's literally just a small piece of fabric that I just managed to squeeze into the back. And then I've got this horrible little scrap left over. I say horrible because it's just tiny and a bit useless, but I might try and applique it on the inside of the front lining because that's plain. So the back lining's got the kimono, the front lining's plain because there just wasn't enough, and I wanted to make the most of the fabric. And I was thinking of doing like an applique something just to get a bit more of the pattern fabric in use, because it is a very lovely piece of fabric with like a very gorgeous and quite complicated weave, jacquard weave. Very complicated indeed. Yeah, just to make a bit more of that. So hopefully I will crack on with that. A few weeks ago I talked about foraging and collecting a bunch of herbal plants, leaves and flowers, and I've now dried them out fully so they got very crispy and dry, and I've submerged them in organic sunflower oil. So I've got calendula oil here and I've got comfrey oil here, and I'll just crack on with them and leave them in the sun to infuse. So it's pretty low-key, you just leave it somewhere sunny, you're shaking it every now and then for 4 weeks, and then I guess the next stage that I'll tell you about with my herbal oils is making them into some kind of healing skin balm, because I've been unsuccessful in some inadvertent fights that my rose bushes have picked with me. I've been the victim, they're such bullies, and I'm definitely going to benefit from like a skin salve for healing up wounds, which is what comfrey does in quite a potent manner, and then just general like calming and soothingness from the calendula. So yes, very, very excited about that. And if you're new to the channel, I've been dabbling in a little bit of learning about wild herbs and herbal medicines and so on that I talk about kind of sporadically, and definitely enjoying from a completely amateur perspective. And it's sort of very slow, and I like the way that it blends gardening and the outdoors with food and medicine and kind of kitchen and lifestyle, you know, outdoors and nature and all of that all together. Yes, so that is pretty much that for this fortnight's episode. Thank you very much for watching and for facilitating me to entertain myself and get dressed up in everything sparkly. Let me know if you cast on the wafer crunch socks, if you've got any socky plans over the summer. And also let me know if you have taken the opportunity to wear something slightly more extravagant from your wardrobe in recent weeks, or maybe I might inspire you to do so from my antics here, because I'm literally all dressed up with nowhere to go. If you've enjoyed this episode, do give it a thumbs up, drop me a comment down below, and also don't forget to sign up for my monthly newsletter, Postcards from the Crimson Stitchery. It's free and it's something that I write and enjoy sending out at the beginning of every month with like more colour and just general updates, recommendations, tips, and so on and so forth. Hope that you are well, hope that you are happy, and if not, hope that you have been entertained. Take care, and I'll see you for another video podcast in 2 weeks. Bye bye.